Hey, and welcome. I'm Dave, and you are listening to Life Is Peachy, a nostalgia-fueled podcast that allows me to sit here and waffle on about the bands and the albums that became the soundtrack to my life.
Hey, what's the matter?
I don't know, Hot Rod.
Come on, you can tell me.
Guess I just miss my dad.
Growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, and while we're at it, sharing a few memories from Her Name Is Murder Productions. Well, welcome to a not-so-new episode of the Life Is Peachy Podcast. It's been a minute, and I really wanted to touch base and check in with you all. Flips, plain and simple. I miss you. I miss this, and honestly, I really wanted to stay connected in the best way I know how. It just felt a little strange thinking about releasing content when there is so much going on around the world. I know globally a lot of people are hurting right now and going through circumstances that are quite unimaginable. I do want to take this moment to truly send out love and compassion. And this is not preaching an answer or solution or even pretending that I understand. I just find some sort of solace in the power of music, its connection between each other and ultimately oneself. It's just something I wanted to at least put out there. Nothing but love.
Until that day, till all are one.
Where have I been? Well, in one of the biggest turn of events affecting me personally, after over 2 years, I've had the opportunity to visit my home, Australia, and see family and friends. And at the time of releasing this episode, I am now coming towards the tail end of an amazing 2.5 month trip spent with loved ones, reconnecting with the land, and being as present with all of this as possible. I never took all of the above for granted, but I suppose what I subconsciously did was the privilege I had to see the ones I loved when I would visit Australia annually. This stuff, the people I love and care for all around the world, it's what means the most to me, and that's where I've been these last months. Taking it all in and just being here, present and physically around that love and energy. And on top of that, a lot of things I love doing with Her Name Is Murder Productions are back in full swing. To be on a set again, directing music videos, and to feel excited about documenting upcoming tours and festivals is something I'm both grateful and extremely excited for. Since episode 15 with Kittie's Fallon Bowman, international borders reopened in Queensland, along with most of the COVID travel restrictions and regulations being lifted, and after over 2 years of patiently waiting, literally overnight, everything changed, and a week later I was hugging my mum and dad again, watching new metal music videos with my best friend and younger brother Dean.
My favorite singer in the whole world is in my band.
So why? Why rehash? Why release old content? What's the point of this feature presentation? Well, first and foremost, I really wanted to say hi. I've missed hanging out with you, and the nice thing is I've really noticed that I need this interaction and this platform in my life. It's now really a big part of my general happiness, and I feel strongly about remaining active with this community of amazing listeners. Between personal life and managing my full-time business, Her Name Is Murder Productions, it's been a little challenging juggling the time management and general balance between this passion podcast, but making sure I still pay the bills. But in case anyone was wondering, I'm still very much here, and I'm beyond committed to bringing you another year of audio documentary podcast episodes with some of your favorite artists, celebrating those fan favorite releases. I've continued to map out, write and record new episodes for the Life Is Peachy podcast, and yeah, I hope you can stay with me for the ride, because I'd really love to be in this together with the Lip community.
No way, two can play.
Beyond that, episode 1115 is the way I imagined it would be back when I first started mapping out albums and guests and concepts early 2021, bringing together episode 11 and episode 15,
Episode 1115,
and encapsulating that back-to-back 2 album spectacle that engrossed me throughout high school. founding members Fallon Bowman and Morgan Lander look back on Spit and Oracle respectively in one feature episode, a double album package many associate with as the golden era of Kittie. This is not a new episode, but it does include a never before released interview segment with Morgan discussing her feel-good collaboration with Head Planet Earth, which featured on 2000's Broke. So for those of you that have already listened to both episode 11 and 15, then check the episode description for this particular episode, because there you'll find a time code and you can directly check that out.
Excellent.
A little something to say thank you for sticking with the podcast and to remind you that there is definitely more coming your way very soon. And anyone listening right now, new to the Life Is Peachy podcast, hello. This is here for you, so you can experience these episodes as a back-to-back feature for the first time and continue building that anticipation towards the When We Were Young festival, Kittie's epic return to the stage at the end of October.
Start the music.
So, get yourself comfortable, grab that popcorn, and let's deep dive into Kittie's year 2000 debut Spit and 2001 sophomore Oracle with the amazing Fallon Bowman and Morgan Lander.
When their debut album Spit was released in the year 2000, the world 11 days fresh of surviving Y2K, heavy music continued to throw everything at us in all colours, shapes and sizes, and we the people, we were hungry for all of it. There were no limits, no prejudice. New music was being pushed and promoted everywhere via every available avenue. All you had to do was purchase a music magazine, watch a music video channel, listen to the radio, and you would discover so much music, so many new bands. It was maybe the last period in the industry where an even playing field seemed to exist, and all bands were seen and treated as huge, the next big thing.
Is that gasoline I smell? No!
Well, at least that's how it seemed through my eyes back then. But Kittie's debut album was released during this period of time. From the very beginning, Kittie were a band that just fascinated me. Formed in 1996 and consisting of sisters Morgan and Mercedes Lander, Tanya Candler and guitarist Fallon Bowman, they wasted no time in releasing 2 demos before bursting out onto the international audience with 2000's new metal infused Spit, all while at the average age of 16 and still attending high school. After meeting Mercedes in gym class, Fallon would co-found Kittie at the age of 14 and play with them until 2001. And even though this period of time would only stretch 5 years in the band's 25 plus year span, for many of us this classic lineup, including bassist Talina Atfield, is the Kittie we first fell in love with and stayed with forever. Oh crap.
Recording in progress.
Yes, I got it. Thank you, Zoom.
Just like on set with my video camera, my biggest fear is getting to the end of an interview and forgetting to press the record button.
Like, guess what? You're being recorded. Yeah, I do. I'm an actor too, so I do quite a few of my callbacks are done over Zoom. They had to warn us before we were starting our scene. Hey, you're being recorded. And then she comes in there. You're being recorded.
Well, now it seems like the perfect time to introduce the one and only Fallon Bowman to the Life Is Peachy podcast. Original guitarist of Canada's Kittie and returning in 2021 with your solo project Amphibious Assault. Thank you so much for your time and energy and joining episode 15.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Excellent.
I'm working on a theater production right now. It's long 8-hour days and it's crazy. This is nice though to just sit and relax.
Well, I'm so glad to hear and appreciate that you consider something like this relaxing.
Yeah.
the last few years, there's just a lot of anniversaries happening and all of this powerful nostalgia floating around in the air as a result of such a special time in music and also for the people listening to it back then. It was something profound for all of us, I think, artists and fans. And we are here, of course, to look back on Spit. But before you even started Kittie, would you say that you were surrounded by the influence of music growing up?
I would say certainly. That's always been a part of my life. I come from I wouldn't say a long line, but especially on my father's side, heavy family band thing. I only found this out recently, actually, but it makes so much sense. My grandfather was in a band with his entire extended family. Like, we're talking banjos and all these homemade instruments. And like, that's what people got together to do, to surround themselves with song and family and food and whatever. So it sounded very jovial. Obviously, I wasn't there. I wasn't even born yet. But music, in terms of just hearing it all the time, there was always a soundtrack of my life, from tiny, could barely walk Fallon to now. I think I would probably credit my dad with having super eclectic taste in music. Hearing that as a kid, that kind of became the soundtrack to my life. And sometimes I'll throw on those exact same albums because it just reminds me of growing up and being surrounded by just cool music. He just had really cool taste. And then my sisters were the complete opposite. They like dance hall and reggae and hip hop and R&B. And so I can name pretty much every 90s reggae or dance hall album that ever came out because of them. And then I met people who had other musical influences as well. So being Morgan and Mercedes, who I'd never really heard metal before. So they were really the ones that introduced me to it. And I was like, yes.
Yes, amazing.
This is it.
I find that concept so interesting. Growing up within the four walls of the family home and having your parents' musical tastes and influences passed down onto you. And then this pyramid starts forming with input from siblings, friends, the radio, and then eventually coming to discover music completely independent and on your own terms, you know, as your style and taste was now taking shape and form.
Yeah.
When did that lean towards the idea of wanting to start up a band and use that as a way to create and express yourself?
Well, there were two phases for me, I would say, because I really started writing music very, very early. And when I say music, I use that loosely. I didn't really know how to write music. I was just writing lyrics and singing them. That came very early. But writing in terms of I want to be in a band and I want to play guitar. At first, actually, it was drums, but my parents refused to buy me drums.
Wow. You're amazing, dude.
Thanks. I like to play.
And I was like, okay, guitar then? Will that be okay? They're like, yes, with headphones. Sure.
Thank you.
That really came, I would say, around like 10, 11, 12. I started discovering grunge. Grunge was like huge for me. Huge at those times because it was like literally just after Kurt Cobain died, of course.
Singer and guitarist Kurt Cobain was found dead this morning from a self-inflicted blast from a 12-gauge shotgun.
I started discovering Nirvana and all of the bands that came out of Seattle. Whole kind of grunge wave.
Caught my first tube this morning, sir.
That's what really got me pumped about maybe starting a band. Didn't really know many other women that played at that time. Tons of guys in their garage bands. I was always really inspired by the fact that they could just get together and do that. I'm like, yeah, guys, can I come and jam? And they're like, a girl. What?
Hey, everybody. Got some awesome news. We have a new crew member today, Denise.
Hi, everyone.
Definitely discovering Nirvana was like pivotal for me. I was absolutely blown away and so dangerously obsessed with Nirvana. It was really problematic, I would think, at some points. They changed the game, 100%. I wasn't even necessarily infected by how popular they were. Because remember, at this point, he'd already died. But I think it was the tortured artist, I think, that was attractive to me. Literally,
definitely.
The fact that you have somebody that really felt tortured by the fact that he had to create art, that it for some reason just spoke to me, which is kind of strange when you think about it. Being 10 or 11, looking at this man and being like, wow, I totally feel where you're getting from. It's like, do I? Did I really understand what he was going through as a 26 or 7-year-old man? Like, I don't think I did, but I romanticized, I think, what he was experiencing and what he was writing about and the punk rock lifestyle and whatever I conceived of that at the time. I was like, yeah, I love that. They just don't give a fuck and they're just screaming about things. I love that.
Yeah.
The primitiveness of it really spoke to me.
What would I do without you? No, you complete me.
I came from a great upbringing and friends, good life, but I have always resonated or felt akin to the darkness and dark subject matter within music and been attracted to that particular emotion.
Yes.
And to some extent, there must be a part of me that relates to that or understands that, because it just seems to make sense to me. This music must act as a vessel or a therapy for me to process these emotions and feelings and
some extent,
express them, get them out, and be okay with them.
I definitely agree with you. It definitely has to speak to some part of us that either we're a little bit hesitant to deal with in other ways. The music gives us a safe space in order to do that.
Yes, definitely. But I remember meeting Daryl Palumbo of Glassjaw and being so excited to show him my GJ logo tattoo, and he was awesome. He signed it and hung around for a quick second, and I told him that when everything you've ever wanted to know about Silence came out, I completely connected with it to the extent that when I was 15, I thought, this album's written about me, or that even I had written the lyrics myself. And I'll never forget it. He looked at me and said, "Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that."
That's enough.
And then it hit me, what was I even talking about?
Yeah.
But I guess what I really meant to say was that I really resonated with his vulnerability and expression, that expression of emotion that created a safe place for me to think and feel the things I wanted to, and to know that it was possible to do that.
So that's what I felt when I first heard Sepultura's Roots for me. And I was coming off of Thinking in Utero is the greatest album of all time. Don't Come For Me. I literally loved it. And then they're playing this for me. And I'm like, where has this been all of my life? It's such a funny first band to kind of have your heavy metal cherry popped with. It is very primitive sound, especially on Roots. It has like a tribal aspect to it, which I was just like, yes, this is great. It was not a slippery slope, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, I just wanted to consume everything that I saw that spoke to that part of me.
Yeah, and that was the beginning of falling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. But I was literally Alice, like, oh my God, what is this? From there, it was just like hearing Korn. And then, oh my God, hearing the Deftones, forget it. I was just done. I'm like, this is just it's like hearing angels sing. It was just incredible.
That is the perfect impression of First Impact with Deftones. So around the same time in my life, I was with my family and we were visiting friends in Newcastle, Australia, and the daughter of the family took me into her room, which was full of all these CDs and VHS, and she introduced me to Roots, Rage Against the Machine, so much stuff, and made me this amazing mixtape to take back to Brisbane. It was... some sort of enlightened experience or something.
Yeah, indeed.
And from there, that was the beginning of the end for me, so to speak. I became completely addicted to the detective work, to the chase.
It became a chase. That's exactly it. I imagine your situation was the same. Even though I was in Canada and very close to the US, all these bands are from the US, it was expensive as hell I remember I paid more than $30, which to a 12 or 13-year-old kid is a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much.
It was $35. I imported Snots Get Some.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
It remains probably one of my favorite CDs of all time. It's just incredible. Worth every fucking penny, really. But yeah, I was like, how is it so expensive? I'm literally just getting it from across the border.
Okay. I brought this up a few times in some of the previous episodes. It's crazy that you specifically mentioned Get Some, because this album in particular, in Australia, ordering it on a complete whim, 6 weeks wait, bulk price, all on a hunch, and hoping the rest of the album would speak to me.
How many of our decisions were made from reading about just a mention in a magazine? I think with Snot, it was because they'd mentioned that Theo Kogan from the Lunatics sang on that record. And I'm like, fuck, that's awesome. So, okay, I will give it a chance. And I'm putting a lot of weight onto the words of this music journalist. I'm going to drop $35 Canadian. I trusted a lot of their word. Like, okay, yeah, I should buy this. Yes.
And sometimes it wouldn't pay off.
No.
But when it did, it was like...
Oh, it really did. Yeah. And then also how much, besides like music magazines, how much programmed music video shows influenced my buying decisions as well. Here we have Much Music, kind of like MTV. They had one particular show that played only heavy music, and it's called Loud. Video after video after video. And we would write down the names of these bands. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh yeah, I like that. Oh, that's awesome. And it was just the chase. Like you're saying, you're just trying to getting their albums.
Yeah, it was my first drug. Probably.
yeah. It's a good, at least it's good and it's free. Well, not free. It's not free. No, you're still paying for it.
A price worth paying. There is such a vibe present in the sound of Kittie's debut. One that really gets under your skin and into your DNA. Spit is raw, relentless, and filled to the brim, overflowing with a grimy texture and atmosphere that is very addictive and somewhat therapeutic. And you can't deny it. As soon as that guitar starts up on the opening track, it's like a trance. I'm in. I was in when I was 15, and over 20 years later, it still does the same thing to me.
Awesome.
What were your intentions entering the studio for your debut album, and what did you hope to come out with on the other side?
What's really funny is that those songs, we had been sitting on them since our first demo tape, which was called Sex is Hell. Then we had an EP that came out after that. So they had literally had time to incubate and grow to the point where we wanted it to sound, and I think that was very deliberate, having it sound very raw. And I think we described it sort of like we wanted to punch people in the face when you hear it, which I think we accomplished. Sex is Hell grabs you, but in a different way, in a very like 90s way. Sonically, Spit as it is exactly what we're looking for. A raw, not polished. Even though it's much more polished than what we did on the EP, it was still retained that grit that we were looking for. And then I think also on some level, we didn't know what we were looking for until we heard it. We wanted to play it and like see what we could do. And one thing that really stuck out with me that I was a little bit afraid of at first was when Garth brought me in to do guitar tracking, he was just like, all right, we're going to give you this guitar to play. And here's what the setup looks like. I'm like, oh, and I was very married to the way that my guitar sounded. But I, first of all, trusted him implicitly that he knew what he was doing, because clearly I'm freaking 13 or 14. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just like, okay, listen, sir, I like the way that my guitar sounds.
Like, I know you've produced Rage Against the Machine and all.
Yeah, but like, I know what I'm talking about. I'm 13, okay? So just, so I was a little bit apprehensive about that. What if it doesn't sound good? What if it doesn't sound like me or whatever? But I don't think it would have attained that grit and just heaviness. There was no opportunity for anything to get through. Like, you were continuously getting punched in the face. If I would have come in with my like shitty fucking 15-watt amp, that would have been accomplished, right? I think we accomplished what we were looking to do without really even knowing exactly what that was. It was just like, we just wanted to just punch people in the face with the sound. Okay. Can we do that? Awesome.
Describe to me what it felt like for you hearing back the mixes of those songs for the very first time.
Oh my God. I haven't been able to replicate in my life many times where I've been so fucking pumped. Hearing something sound so satisfying and so heavy, because we were so preoccupied with hearing albums that had so much devilry happening musically, sonically. We wanted to capture that, and then hearing just like pre-mixed version. We were so fucking pumped, dude. I can't even tell you. We were like screaming little girls, which is exactly what we were. Just like, oh my God, that's so fucking awesome. Like, just losing it. It's this feeling I haven't been able to completely replicate in subsequently, because it's just been me. I haven't really been in a band since, but it's indescribable is what I'm trying to say, I think.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Spit was released January 11th, 2000 through NG Artemis Records, a gold record, selling more than 600,000 copies in the US alone, peaking at 79 on the US Billboard and staying on the charts for 37 weeks. Keep in mind, a lot of the songs from Spit were written when the band were around 14 years old.
Wow.
It was recorded over 9 days at Emax Studios in Canada with acclaimed producer Gigi Garth. Yo, the guy responsible for Rage Against the Machine's debut and a slew of new metal classics. If you followed the podcast, then you know. In general, what was that experience like leading up to the moment and working with producer Garth Richardson?
We were sending out our demos. We were sending out things to big record labels. I may be misremembering this, but we definitely sent them to like Roadrunner, Metal Blade, Nuclear Blast, like all those really quote unquote big metal record labels, and getting rejected everywhere, left, right, and center, because I'm sure they didn't know what to do with us. And that's probably one of the reasons why. But what I would love to recapture again in my life is just the wide-eyed wonder of the process of creating an album. Mm-hmm. Since I'm doing things on my own now, I think that part is lost a little bit, where we're creating something, we're getting together and things are just happening and it's just magic all around, which I think can only really be replicated with being in a band with other people who you just click with 100%. So that feeling and that experience was so much was just a lot of magic happening and really history happening in real time. It was a little overwhelming, but also just so invigorating and exciting. But then also having this sort of innocence about it, like, oh, okay, we're recording an album for a week and then we're just going back to high school and like going back to our mundane lives and hating grade 9 mathematics or whatever it was and being horrible at it, and, you know, walking down the hallway and people throwing things at you because they think your hair is dirty or something, because we were corn kids at the time, right? So we would all have like dreads, and they would yell like, take a shower or whatever. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about, dude?
Spit in Your Eye, a feature-length band documentary, was released along with music videos for singles Brackish and Charlotte. And in a 2-year period, Kittie were catapulted into a crazy world, touring with Chevelle, Slipknot, Sevendust, Suicidal Tendencies, Shovel, and playing the iconic Ozfest. Brackish and Charlotte peaked at number 46 and 60 on the UK singles chart. Both music videos were played on MTV, with Charlotte being one of the most played on that channel during July 2000.
In the space of a year, they've not only recorded their first album called Spit, signed on with an American record label, and they even went to New York to shoot their first video.
You know, it was like, what a contrast, right?
Yeah, two different worlds, or two
different
headspaces at least.
Absolutely. I get to be a kid, but I'm a working kid right now. So oddly enough, a lot in common with like child actors. Like they're like kids, but they're not, you know?
Funny enough, that point you just made leads into my next question. Really love the band sections in the Charlotte music video. It highlights your uniqueness as a performer, and the way you chose to present how you played was always really intriguing to me. There's a huge vibe in general within that video from all of you. The band dynamic is really cool in the performance and also the member cutaway scenes. In a short space of time, you've gone from going to school to now performing on TV, playing huge shows, shooting music videos. What went into creating your stage presence and persona, and how would you have described it?
Ooh, it's a good one. If you look at earlier photos of me in particular, I was very afraid to let go, if that makes sense. Just be crazy and rock out. The whole experience of me being in Kittie was like this blossoming of embracing the confidence to just do it. Balls out, let's just fucking do it. And so you see me in the beginning, I just want to fucking hide. I don't want to perform in front of people. I don't want to, do this. It's scary. It's nerve-wracking, whatever. But then it just kind of changed at one point. I'm just like, I'm a natural performer. That's what I do. Why am I being so afraid to be myself? And most of the time it was just playing in front of our friends, even though that's probably sometimes the most nerve-wracking times. But just do it. Whatever feels, whatever comes out, just do it. I don't know if there's anybody in particular that I looked at and I'm like, I'm going to be like them, but I think it just came out organically and just morphed into this psycho person. And sometimes I couldn't keep it up for an hour-long set. It was a lot. And then I would go in like a little ebb and flow of just, maybe I'll just stand here now. And that was okay. I just had to give myself permission to do that. Just be a wild person, if that's what I feel like doing.
Yeah, there was something really unique about your demeanor in the Charlotte music video. Almost minimalistic, but with such presence. And I loved how you maintained eye contact with the camera. Yeah. It was a mixture of something inviting and very unsettling.
You're playing a role, really.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's talk about that. Is that what it felt like for you?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, stage Fallon was not really the same as offstage Fallon.
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
There were certainly parts of it. We were playing these songs so many times and we're getting kind of sick of them. We really wanted to get in and start writing the second album or whatever. But then there were just some times where the feeling that people described to me when they heard Spit for the first time hit me while I was on stage. In the sense that I realized how fucking amazing it feels and sounds. And it just hit me at this on stage, like, oh my God. And then that makes me freak out. Like, oh my God, yes. And then you're just like another one in the audience who's also enjoying the music, but you're playing it. It's weird. It's like outside of my body experience. That happened to me frequently where I was like, oh my God, this song is awesome.
Yes. I mean, it's such a nice feeling when you dig what you create, right? And it has nothing to do with ego or vanity. It's such a nice energy to feed off and can be a really positive thing and creatively so stimulating.
Yeah. I think there was a second part to your question and I didn't answer it. I apologize.
Oh yeah, I can't even remember now, but
yeah,
I'm sure we went
Okay,
there.
I did. Okay, good. So like there was a second part, but honestly, I got more thoughts, ADD, you know, more thoughts come in there and I'm like, oh, but there's this and da, 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 da. So I apologize.
Oh, no. Yeah. I love it. It's great. And also, that's what I get for often asking two-part questions. This isn't the first time I've had this happen, but I just can't help myself. Two-part questions or go home, yo.
Yeah, fair. I appreciate your thoroughness though.
I remember the first time I heard Kittie. I was traveling the UK with my family, experiencing foreign landscapes while living in a camper van and visiting my mother's heritage. Somewhere there along the way, we treated ourselves to a night of accommodation outside of the van, and with me I had a Metal Hammer magazine with a complimentary compilation CD which featured many songs, one of which was by Canada's Kittie from their soon-to-be-released debut album, Spit. Most of my memories are associated with music. That's probably pretty obvious by now. And while having this fortunate, very humbling experience to travel overseas as a very young teenager, I have to honestly say that what I remember most comes down to associations with my passions and interests, cinema and music, and their connection to what was happening during that holiday. So to paint the scene, we were warmly settled into our lovely accommodation with a common area that looked out over the ravenous, frozen British countryside landscape. Nestled into a comfy couch with this breathtaking view, I now had a moment to myself and the opportunity to finally get lost in my metal magazine while listening to the CD on my Discman. All the while in this completely surreal setting and circumstance. Now, I had never heard female-fronted vocals in heavy music, so Kittie were my first, and nothing can ever take that away. I loved the fact that you were high school kids who started a band and were signed. And likewise, because of Stray Sunklodo, my favorite band, a band from the Gold Coast who was signed to Sony Music, all at the average age of 16, it hit me with that epiphany. Hey, if they can do it. And the rest was history. I wanted to be in a band that very same day, and you can check out more of that story in episode 12 with Luke McDonald of Sunklodo.
What a just, love it.
When Spit was released, I was actually only a year or so younger than you, but at that point in time in my life, anyone in a band seemed older to me, not just in age, but in terms of life experience and accomplishments and the guts it would take to do that job. I was just a kid and the bands were always the adult, and I was following your career in magazines on the other side of the world in Australia, so it all seems so very grown up and far outside any world I knew or could relate to. But it's so easy to forget that when it came down to it, you were all just kids, you know, you were teenagers doing this.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. What was it like essentially growing up and in many ways discovering yourself as an artist, as a person, in front of crowds around the world? How did that impact you?
It was very confusing at times, I must admit. Also very lonely. And I'm not trying to make it sound woe is me, you know, negative, whatever, but there were certainly parts of it that I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is maybe a little bit too intense for what I am emotionally and psychologically capable of dealing with, because there were certainly moments where it's like, okay, we're going to be playing in front of, 50,000 people. And in theory, it's no different than us playing in our basement for ourselves. We're playing songs that we've been playing over and over and over again for, at this point, since 1996. Like, it shouldn't be any different, but the pressure to make sure that we deliver adequately was a lot. Make sure that we play perfectly every night so that people don't give any fuel to the people that don't think we can do it, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm dead either way. So do it yourself, asshole.
So that was hard to deal with at times. But on the flip side, how many 15, 16-year-olds were doing what we were doing at the time? And honestly, would not want to be in any other place at that point. Even given the pressure, it was absolutely worth it in a lot of ways. There were some times that I wish I was older getting into it, but I don't regret it. I certainly don't regret it. It was just, I kind of sometimes wish I handled things differently in other ways. But I was literally a child. Like, I didn't know any other way.
I think it's really admirable. At that age, you're just not really that equipped with all the life skills necessary to be dealing with or processing a lot of that, let alone navigating through the pressures of high school. It's really so surreal whenever I hear about this from any of my guests, doing the things you were doing so young.
Dealing with like lawyers and record labels and all these people that are throwing millions of dollars behind you. That's huge pressure for a kid.
Do you think I'm
Although I think a lot of it I'm maybe projecting onto myself as a kid. I'm thinking about all the $1 million thing that was going on at the time now as a 37-year-old. At the time, I don't think I was really caring at all what people were spending money on. But now I think back on it, maybe I did. Maybe I was kind of conscious about that. So the pressure was getting to me at some points in my career. So it's a lot to deal with. It takes a certain constitution to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Were saying that sometimes you would feel lonely. What were some of the things you would try and do to pull yourself out of that?
Oh, thank God. I was a prolific journaler. Prolific. And also because I'm a huge hoarder, I keep everything, and I still have every single journal from every tour that we did, and even before then.
Way.
So yeah, a book is coming.
I read about it in a book.
And the amount of detail that I would go into sometimes, it surprises me. I'm like, the amount of maturity that I had at that time that I lost. Like, as soon as I turned 20, I just became an idiot again. And then looking back and I'm like, wow, I was really like eloquent at this time, speaking about these things very deeply and poetically. And it surprised me because I'm like, was that me? Did I actually write that? Not tooting my own horn, but like, 16-year-old Fallon, she knew what was up.
To be or not to be.
not to be.
But yeah, that's journaling really helped me. And I also had a wonderful group of friends, and my family kept me very grounded as well. They didn't treat me any differently. They had their own lives, and I came home and I'm like, hey, I came back from touring. Oh yeah, cool. They didn't treat me any differently, so that was also tremendously helpful, I think.
Yeah. Where you had the stability to return to or to count on when you needed it.
Yeah. I had a cell phone at that point. It was a very rudimentary one, but I could at least call my friends. Actually, I really only had one friend at that time. Bless her. And she would tell me all like the high school gossip, who's dating who, and there was a big fight at school. And that kept me sane and fought off the loneliness.
And so while you're calling up and checking in on the goss going on back at school, you're also playing festivals like Ozfest.
Yeah.
I love looking back, at some of these events, moments, circumstances in the early stages of Kittie's career, because for myself, they really help put into perspective that crazy little bubble you were all in.
Yeah.
What was an experience like Ozfest like, playing such an iconic festival while so young, but on a bill made up mostly by male-dominated bands, performing for largely male-driven audiences?
Oh, what an experience, really. It was just incredible. Being on Ozfest was really interesting because it was literally like a traveling circus, but also just like high school. Like we're all just traveling high school, essentially. So even though we weren't in high school anymore at that point, and I was hearing the stories from my friend back home, like I was already in high school, but just like we play in bands, you know what I mean? We all ate in a cafeteria. We all kind of knew the gossip and what was happening, blah, blah, blah. We all kind of had our cliques, and some people kind of hung out together. Like we hung out with Reveille because they were in their late teens, early 20s. So they were young guys, hang out with them. And then we would hang out with Shovel. We had already toured with them with Seven Dust. So that's why we were so thick as thieves, because we already toured together. They were just amazing. Love those guys. So we hung out with like the quote unquote younger guys, younger people, but they were still 10 years older than us.
Which, at your age, is a big difference.
It was a big difference. But then again, they were about as mature as a 17-year-old kid. Yeah. Love them to pieces. I say that with peace and love, by the way. So we were on the same in terms of maturity. It's like we're hanging out with dudes that we were hanging out with back home. So it wasn't any different. But it was such a warm camaraderie that we had. And then in terms of it being male dominated, very, very interesting. Because like I said, we hung out with the kind of younger guys, but then there were certainly the older contingent that were suspicious of us for some reason, or they just didn't even pay attention to us, which is fine, whatever. That always struck me as weird. I don't want to speak for the other ladies, but it always struck me as strange. Like, I guess I'm not calling anybody out here by saying this because it was true. The guys in Crazy Town would never talk to us. It was like this weird thing.
It's better to forget.
To forget? After I've seen the outline of my brother's body on the floor, you expect me to forget? I want to kill those sons of bitches. I'm gonna blow their fucking heads off.
Or guys in POD would never talk to us. It was like, okay, what? Hi, hello, oh, hello. And not sure what was up there, but it was very weird vibes. They didn't maybe want to know or didn't want to talk to us, didn't want to get to know us, whereas everybody else was super, super friendly. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that we were young or women or both.
From a fan's point of view, Ozfest, especially back then, was some sort of mecca when it came to the bands on the touring circuit, and it just seemed like a concert goer's dream come true. Even more so for me, you know, growing up in Australia and living it from afar through magazines and stuff.
Yeah.
Were there any pinch yourself moments from Ozfest, you know, meeting certain bands or members or anything that really stands out to you as something you'll have forever?
Oh, yeah. Certainly. Prior to me being on Ozfest, I wasn't a huge Pantera fan, but I got into them when Reinventing the Steel came out, which came out in 2000. And that was why they were touring on Ozfest. I think someone had given me the CD for free as like a promo. And I'm like, holy fuck. And so then I had the absolute privilege of seeing them a couple of times, even though they were directly after our set. I had the privilege of seeing them and quote unquote partying, not really partying, obviously, we were kids, but with like Dimebag and getting to know them as people. These just really super jolly dudes. That's what they came across as to me. I was already a huge Incubus fan before then, so I got to get to know them very well and then also see them play a handful of times, which was awesome. Those were the big highlights for me, seeing Incubus, seeing Pantera, and Soulfly too, because I was like, fuck, man, Soulfly, like their album, the first one, we opened for them sort of directly before, so a lot of the time I didn't get to see their set, but there were a couple of times where I caught them. I'm like, oh, fuck, still slaps. Every song.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge fire on Soulfly's debut. I mean, he had to come out swinging on that one, right? So, in my opinion, there's a lot of magic there. And, of course, Ross Robinson, once again. Actually, not to take anything away from Garth at all, but I've always thought there's a lot of vibe and atmosphere in Spit that in some ways is very reminiscent of Ross Robinson.
We were certainly very, very aware of Ross, really because we were watching Korn's Who Then Now. Have you seen it? You've seen it?
Yeah, I own it on VHS.
Of course you do. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. You know, we watched that religiously as kids, and doesn't figure prominently in it, as you know, but like he's there, and you know.
And to me, that's God.
Yeah, that's the guy. He's responsible for this.
I can't fucking stress hard enough how important it is to shine something beyond your fucking bodies, okay? You gotta conjure the thing that's just screaming to come out of you. Screaming, dying to come out of you. This is it. Everything that you've ever loved has to come through right now. This is all we have. This is all we have. We have nothing else. We don't even get to keep our fucking bodies. But this lasts and inspires. So let's get it on.
He kind of got this mythical status. Because of Ross, I found Limp Bizkit and feel how you feel about them now. But like at the time when I heard $3 Bill Y'all, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I like this. More so, I think, for Wes's guitar sound. I was like, fuck, this album is just so heavy.
Facts.
Take away Fred's singing and just listening to it, the music isolated. Whew.
I think of myself at that age in that headspace, in that world of wanting to be in a band. Starting one with my friends in school, it's one of my fondest memories. In many ways, so many experiences and moments of growth stem from that band. And we were just local, but it was a way for me to find my voice and express myself at a point in time in life when it can often be such a struggle. Once Kittie was signed and a full-time touring act, how did the business side of things impact you as a creative? Like, did anything change for you, positive or negative, from starting the band in high school with friends to Kittie essentially becoming a professional business?
Yeah, we had those songs that had time to incubate, right? So like 3 years. 3 years to sit there and refine and write more. And then after the Snowcore tour ended in 2001, we were expected to write something in like 3 months. So that's when it really hit me. Even though I'd been touring now 2 years, since we toured in 1999 too, I felt a bit like a circus animal. There were a lot of moving parts that were kind of going on that I wasn't exactly privy to at the time. I had to perform, I had to produce, I had to put these things out. And then the reality of the fact that this had become a business was a rude awakening. I know that a lot of musicians get around that by when they're on tour, they still will continue to write. I've never been that type of person. I think I might have ADD. Like, I just need to be hyper focusing on one thing and do it really, really well. But I'm touring right now. That's what I'm doing. I can't do touring and writing at the same time. It's just not in me to do that. I mean, we could have gotten around that by writing while we're on the road, but I just can't do it. Sure. So that was when that really became very clear to me in a negative way, that now this is a business and we're expected to write a new album in 3 months and record it. And then it became really, the pressure was just immense to write something. We were coming into our writing sessions being like, okay, so what do you want to do with this? And I, at that point, was starting to get into other types of music. I was heavily into industrial music. So I was listening to like KMFDM and Ministry pretty much every freaking day. And I'm like, yeah, can we like add some more like synths? Can we add stuff like that? Can we experiment a little bit? First of all, I don't think we had time to do all that, but then it became a creative difference thing. We had totally different visions about where we were going to go with the next album. And I'm like, this isn't sustainable. This isn't going to work. How are we going to fucking get through this in 3 months? It's not going to work.
Would you say then, looking back with over 20 years retrospect, that those were the primary reasons contributing towards your decision to walk away from Kittie? Those creative differences and the actual pressure to create?
I mean, I think all of us were feeling that though. I just had gotten to a place where it just wasn't sustainable for me. I'm like, I can't do this. I need time to actually write things. I need to sit there and experiment in whatever. We just weren't given that time to do so. Actually, I won't speak for everybody. I'll speak for myself. I didn't feel like I had the veto power to say, no, we're not going to do this in 3 months. We need the time to actually write this record right. Yeah. We had 3-4 years to write Spit. So give us the time to write the second one. And I didn't feel like I had a voice to say that. That's a fact. That's how I felt. It's a fact for me. It was my truth at the time. I didn't feel like I could say, guys, we need more time to do this. Like, come on. Yeah. That was unfortunately the nail in the coffin for me. If this is the way it's going to be, I don't know if I could do this. This is not good.
It's a massive life-changing decision and so interesting because back in high school when someone would leave a band I was really in love with, it was a really hard concept to grasp when those people, you know, are the face of the music or this movement that means so much, and they all seem so essential in representing or portraying that connection to the music and all the positive things it gave me. So as a teenager, when a band member left, there was this, it feels weird to say, but this sense of loss, and it was hard to understand why. I even remember having these emotions of hurt, grief, but that's not even taking into consideration you as a person, as the actual person, you know, the one going through that decision to leave.
Not in my movie.
What was it like for you after leaving Kittie, that transition into the next chapter of your life? I mean, it must have been a pretty crazy experience, right? Especially between 99 and 2001. And then you exit that unique, surreal bubble. Were you equipped with the necessary life skills in terms of picking up the pieces and moving to the next chapter in your life?
No. Not at all. Not at all. I'll be honest with you. It was the darkest period of my life ever. From like May 2001 until August, I didn't leave my parents' basement once at all. Because thankfully I was still a kid, right? And I was still living with my parents. Can you imagine if I were in my 20s or whatever? I probably would have been dead, to be perfectly frank with you. But yeah, I come home to just complete despair, hearing all sorts of rumors about what people are saying about the reason I left. And none of it was even remotely close to the truth. Can you imagine if social media was around then? It would have been absolute self-implosion. I would have it wouldn't have been good. But I was hearing all sorts of rumors and things and people talking about me, and I didn't have the opportunity nor the outlet. If I had Twitter, I would say, listen, this is the reason why, and that's that. But everyone just kind of made up their own reason as to why. Anyway, so that was weighing on me. So I just needed time to like not be around music. I actually divorced from music for a long time. And what I mean by that is like I didn't even listen to music. I didn't play music. I didn't want anything to do with music at all because I felt it betrayed me. It was a very, very dark, awful period.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's silencing a very big part of who you are, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really awful, really, really terrible. But thankfully, I had very great friends. I had wonderfully supportive parents, and that really got me through. And my mom was like, Fallon, you need to leave the house. You need to do things. You need to discover. You're a young woman. You're a child. Like, come on, you're 17. You have to go out and experience life and decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. And that was like, what? I have to actually, what? Yeah, are you telling me to adult now? Like actually adult? That was a rude awakening for sure. Second rude awakening in 1 year.
No longer to be poisoned by civilization, he flees and walks alone upon the land to become lost in the wild.
From there, I took stock of everything that I wanted to do. Do I want to continue with music, or do I want to put that on the back burner and maybe go back to school? Because remember, I had left high school. So that was my first thing. Go back to high school, get back to a sense of normalcy and banality that I had not experienced before in the 2 years prior.
Did that time away then help with being able to eventually open up again to the idea of bringing music back into your life?
Yes, I think so. Because funnily enough, my best friend and I decided to go to New Jersey in August of 2001. Because remember, my mom said, you need to get out of the house. You need to live your life. So her and I decided to take this trip. And at the time, Don't ask why. I'm not going to elaborate. I'll talk about it in my book. I was obsessed with military things, just beyond obsessed. It was a whole phase. I don't understand the psychology of it, what was going on with me at the time. Although I've speculated the reason why was because I was looking for something to belong to, because I felt like I didn't belong to anything anymore. So I was obsessed with like military things, and, I was becoming so interested in industrial music. And I'd already been previously, I'm like, I want to write an industrial album. I think that would be really cool. And so then I started getting into synthesis and understanding like how to program synths and all that stuff. That kind of started to creep into my life the end of 2001 into 2002. That love affair with music started to creep back into my life. And I'm like, okay, I feel safe enough to create music now. I feel like I'm in the headspace to do it. And I had gone back to school as well. Slowly but surely, I took some courses or whatever distance and actually went back to school and started performing in drama class and things like that. That's another thing I did after being in Kittie, was doing a lot of musicals, because I was like, okay, performing in front of people, this is it. Oh, singing in front of people, this is it. Musicals get me going, man. Woo! I will break out into song whether you want it or not. Great work. It's working with people who are passionate and super talented. And I love being surrounded by other artists who are like that. I just want to soak it all up. I never feel like I'm as good as they are. So I'm like, just give me all of your amazingness. So I got back into performance and being in front of people. And then I was slowly, baby steps, becoming back in love with performing that way.
Amphibious Assault's debut album, District 6, was released in 2003 and featured contributions from former Kittie bandmate, bassist Talina Atfield, and was soon followed by 2006 sophomore On Better Day and Sin Eating.
Yeah.
How did that feel to now have something you felt ready to once again invest in and finally have another creative outlet?
It was great, although I was very apprehensive. PTSD almost, like I just came out of it like just being afraid of creating music, because I was very scarred, very like afraid of how it was going to be accepted, because of course Amphibious Assault is not Kittie at all, as far away from it as you could get. And of course MySpace was becoming a thing then as well, and so people were finding me and knowing that I had this project and being like, oh my god, it's awful, it's not metal, and people are already kind of hating on it already. I'm like, the fuck, I'm doomed to become only a metal musician. I can't do anything else. So that was a really hard thing to get over. But at the same time, I'm like, if you don't like it, you can fuck off. I'm sorry.
Yo, yeah, nice.
Sorry, let's call it how it is. You don't like it, you don't have to listen to it. I don't need to know your fucking opinion about how you don't like this and whatever. Don't like it? Fine. I don't care. So we're talking about garnering more confidence. That was really pivotal for me, being like, you know what? Fuck off, sir.
I mean, that's quite a hard place to get to, where you can swipe away that negativity, stand up for yourself, back yourself, not just creatively, but in general on a day-to-day basis. Constructive criticism is fantastic. It's super healthy and essential, but sure. I've never personally understood why strangers will go out of their way and make the effort to bring you down in only negative ways. And there's definitely a big difference between that and constructive criticism.
And I don't want to piss off people by saying this, but I just find that people that are very much entrenched in metal and heavy music, not always, but once you find those people that are so entrenched in it, they would rather not listen to anything else. I feel it's a very dangerous place to be. As a musician, and as I've explained earlier, that my influences are as eclectic as they can get. metal is a part of that. It isn't all of that. It's a part of that. It shapes me as an artist. But I generally don't like talking to people who are like, I only listen to this kind of genre. I'm like, yeah, no. I'm sorry, no.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
I don't trust you. I'm sorry. You know, I will respect your decision to that's all you want to consume, but I don't think we'll have much in common, to be honest.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day.
I think fundamentally it comes down to a really simple concept, that being a good song is a good song.
Thank you.
And just listen to something. If it doesn't connect with you, sweet, all good, that's fine, you know, it's okay.
And it's okay being like, I don't like this. It's fine, but I wouldn't go out and seek your band, David's band, and be like, yo, your band fucking sucks. Why would I take that energy and volley it at someone? First of all, I don't even know. Second of all, what purpose does that serve? I don't get that. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Negativity is such a draining emotion, and you could just spend that time and energy in other areas and potentially reap so much more reward.
100%. Yeah.
Kind of funny, actually, that this happens to be my next question, particularly because it's following what we just talked about. But yeah, did you check out Oracle when it was released?
No.
No.
No. Sorry. I was like, I'm ready to tell you no, I did not. Sorry, you can finish first your question.
No, that's cool. I was just going to ask that if you had, were there any of your riffs or ideas from those post-Snowcore writing sessions present on the album?
No, zero. And it's also funny now, I can look back on it and be like, whatever, it didn't have anything to do with it because, as I said, my head was not in the game to do that at that point. But then I heard it for the first time when I played with them again in 2017.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is pretty good, guys. It was like I was hearing it. Well, I was hearing it for the first time. I was hearing all of their catalog years and years after I had left, all the catalog that they had created. I'm like, yo, this song fucking slaps. This is great. And Morgan's like, thanks. It was like they were a band I'd never heard before. It was brand new to me. So to answer your question, no, I'd never heard it. And I heard it for the first time in 2017.
I think that's pretty cool because it just goes to show where you're at with it all now and with yourself. It seems like a really great place.
Yeah.
Which, once again, funny enough, leads me to the next question. It kind of full circle, closure type of moment, I imagine. October 27th, 2017, you hit the stage with the Landis sisters and played fan favorites from Spit as part of celebrating 25 years of Kittie.
Was I not good enough for you, King? Was I not good enough for you, King? I guess not.
And watching you up there on the DVD, of course, it really looked like you were in it and loving it. Really cool vibes. Was that a surreal moment? And yeah, how was it to play songs you wrote when you were 12, 14, but playing them now in 2017? People to still really feel that music.
Oh man, it was very nerve-wracking because even though, yes, there were songs that I played when I was 12 and up until I was 17, having to relearn my own songs was very strange, like very weird, because I wanted to put those songs in a vault and never hear them or play them ever again. And I thought that that was what was going to happen. So learning to play them again was very interesting. And even during the show, I fucked up still, which was so endearing to me. I was like, aw, I'm still terrible. Great. It was a very heartwarming moment because we all noticed that it happened and we all just kind of laughed because it's like, who cares, right? It's not a big deal. And it kind of added to the surrealness of the night in a way. It was extremely surreal. For sure it was. And playing in front of people. We had people from all over the world, dude. My good friend from Norway came. We met exchanging demos in 1998. He sent me his demo of his band. I sent him a Kittie demo because we met in like a forum where musicians could talk or whatever. And he's been my friend ever since. He was like, I would not miss this show. I'm flying all the way from Norway. I'm going to see it. We had a girl from Australia come. We had people from all over the US come. It was incredible. And it was very overwhelming. Seeing Tanya being like so fucking pregnant and so playing, which was just like, oh my God, you're such a rock star. It's amazing. But I did, and I think I said this to Tanya, or I said it kind of in passing. It was weird not having Talina there because this is supposed to be the original lineup. But so much of what is cemented in people's head is Talina being there that a part of me also wanted to see that happen once more in my lifetime, to kind of close that chapter, as it were. So that made me very, very upset, really. It was just like, I wish you were here. It's such a weird feeling. I wish you were here so you could be part of that. But I knew that that was never going to happen. So a part of me was also mourning that aspect. So it was like a very surreal night, emotional night, a lot of things. There were a lot of feelings.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, there's so much history there. Only you guys as a band know.
Interesting.
I saw on your Instagram that you had recently caught up with Talina. Are you guys still friends? I know absolutely. A lot of fans would really be curious to know if she's happy and doing well.
Very, very well. Talina really saved me in some ways. After I left the band and I told you that I was having like this awful time, we would still see each other whenever she would come into the neighborhood. We would still meet up and talk, and she would tell me how she was feeling and how things were going on with her. And she was just always my lifeline to like sanity. And she always has been like this very like sage person. Like she's just smart and fantastic. And we've kind of ebbed and flowed out of each other's lives over the past 20 years. But every time we come back together, it's like, she's just such a magical person. I just love her to pieces. And yeah, we see each other and we talk relatively frequently, more frequently now than we did before, which is strange. We realize, oh my God, we've been friends for 22 years. We've weathered so many periods in each other's lives over the years. And how weird is that we started not knowing each other in a band? Like I barely knew her when she was in the band. I'm like, I don't really know you very well, but we had a shared connection. And we will always have that connection until we die. So it's weird. On top of the fact that she's an amazing musician, she's obviously whip smart. You know, she's a professor. She's just like great to talk to. If you want to just sort things out in your life, you just go to talk to her. And she's like, yeah, this is what you're going to do. Like, she's very much a doer. And she's super happy, content with her life. And she doesn't have a social media presence as a musician anyways. And that's the way she wants to live her life. And I respect the shit out of that now, that you can choose to have that life and people are okay with that. There are some people that are like dissenters who would be like, why don't you have a social media presence? You need to dance for us. You don't own her. This is her life. Let her live it. So anyways, long story short, yes, she's super happy. She's great. Wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Start the music.
Just over 21 years since the release of Spit, you announced the return of Amphibious Assault, and the release of your new album quickly followed in February 2021. I'll have the links for all of that, of course, in the video description. But what I'm curious about is, why did you decide to bring back this project after 15 years, and what's making music mean to you today?
Ooh, yeah, I did technically close the project of Amphibious Assault in 2009, 2010, or maybe after that. I can't remember. But anyways, at some point I said I'm never going to make an Amphibious Assault album ever again, because I felt like it had run its course and I had gotten it out of my system, if that makes sense. But there were a lot of things happening with me in my life at that time that I felt that that was an appropriate step to make, and that I didn't need music anymore to work through my shit. But clearly that's not the case. Like, I still have that. Why do I keep denying myself this opportunity to work and create things? I don't know why I do that. But anyways, I did bring it back. And for me, music now is less so working out those demons like that we were talking about earlier. It's just really just exercising my curiosity and like, how can we do this? And how can we expand? How can I just make something out of nothing and nurture that and turn it into something that I would listen to and really enjoy? Maybe if other people think it's shit, but that's fine. As long as I like it, then that's good.
Nice.
I think that's what it means to me now, is experimentation. What can I do with it? What kind of album can I make now? Am I going to make like 18-minute long songs? Cool. And I feel almost liberated to do that now. There isn't such a focus on selling albums anymore for me. I just want to create stuff. That's all. I just want to create it. I'm going to put it out there, see what people like about it. If they like it, great. If they don't, whatever. I'll just keep making more.
I feel that. That's essentially my thoughts with the Life Is Peachy podcast and the music video, music documentary work that I do. I want my guest or client to be happy, of course, and definitely proud of the end result. And I want myself to be in love with what I have made. Beyond that, it's fair game or icing on the cake.
Yeah.
When you look back on those early years of the band, what would you consider your fondest memory or proudest moment?
Ooh, automatically want to say like meeting my idols. Getting to feel like I was part of the cool kids club, which has never happened since. I just feel like, wow, okay, I can hang out with all these people and I'm cool now. Maybe that was not necessarily something to be proud of, but it was strange, very surreal to be able to call the drummer from Incubus and he just know your name and think of you as a colleague and as an equal. That to me was like, am I a cool person now? Because this has never happened before.
Is this what it feels like?
Is this what it feels like to be cool? I don't know. It was very disorienting and strange. It is a career achievement, I guess, because the music that I created had gotten the momentum to bring me to that point to meet these people. I guess that's not something really to be proud of. I don't know, but
it is.
I guess also someone that I respect. Yeah, like Dimebag watching our set saying, "You fucking rock." I was like, oh, me? I do? Really?
Amazing.
That concept, that possibility didn't even enter my mind. You think that I'm good? Like, I'm not good. I literally just learned how to play guitar 2 years ago. I am never going to be up to your level of guitar playing. It's just never going to happen. So you saying that carries the most amount of weight. Maybe you're just being nice. I don't know. But that was also a big, wow, have I made it? Someone of your level thinks I'm good. Oh,
I mean, fuck. That is surreal. You
right? I'm good at this. What? You guys are fucking awesome. I'm like, ah!
Coming from Dimebag in Dimebag's voice.
Yeah, you guys are fucking awesome. So that's probably the most distinctive memory that sticks out.
Fallon, I would really love to take this opportunity to thank you for your time and energy joining the first episode of 2022, episode 15 of Life Is Peachy Podcast. This, for me, was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on.
20 plus years is a long time to live with something, even for a fan, and that's why these releases, these moments in time can mean so much. I was playing Spit in the kitchen actually earlier tonight while making dinner, still headbanging, still slapping, still loving it. It's such a great feeling.
Awesome. Love that. Love that.
Nice.
Thank you so much again.
I love this job. You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
In 2020, Canada's Kittie had reason to reminisce and celebrate as their crushing and emotionally raw debut album Spit hit the 20-year mark, and now here we are. Once again, their sophomore release Oracle reaching the same amazing milestone. Oracle marked what would be one of many major turning points in Kittie's career, coming out of the gates hard and fast with their gold record debut at the turn of the millennium. The band's classic lineup of vocalist and guitarist Morgan Lander, sister Mercedes on drums, Fallon Bowman on guitar, and Talina Atfield on bass were placed into the open playing field for everyone to discover and headbang to. Yet it was quickly obvious that a lot of focus would be placed on more than the music when it came to this four-piece band. A lot of media would find themselves fascinated with not only the age and gender of Kittie, but also question their talent and purpose in wanting to create music and express themselves just like anyone else. So much emphasis was placed on the classic era lineup that in many ways one could be forgiven if they even thought Kittie released one album and called it a day. October 27th, 2017 marked a historical moment, reuniting Kittie's past and present members for a 20-year anniversary performance in their hometown of London, Ontario in Canada. Kittie have a legacy, one that in many ways makes more sense looking back in retrospect, even though they were like any other band wanting to make music and follow their dreams. Whether they intended it or not, they opened the doors for many to believe in themselves and follow their very own. Wow. At the average age of 16, they were signed and touring extensively with the greats of the time and were a part of that magical bubble of amazing music and iconic band members. It was an inspirational time to be a teenager, and it's easy to forget that for bands like Kittie, they too were also teenagers, navigating themselves through a crazy existence in a crazy world.
She was probably just hallucinating. Don't worry, I'll check it out.
By the time their record label was in demand for a follow-up to the highly successful Spit, Kittie were down an original member in guitarist Fallon Bowman and entered the studio as a three-piece. Not only were they to battle the industry pressure and demand of a sophomore, but they had to grow up in front of the world on stages around the globe instead of inside a classroom at school. Along with other band posters, I remember having pictures of Kittie on my bedroom walls and sticky taped inside my school diary. They marked a sense of constant inspiration, not even realizing we were around the same age, but in completely different worlds. So at a time when Kittie were thrown into the deep end and forced to grow up fast, both personally and creatively, we arrive at Oracle, an album that both kept the band moving forward and somewhat reinvented them all at the same time. As I place my hands over the crystal ball, I can only wonder, was Oracle an album that spoke of truth and foresaw the future? Well, one person can definitely help delve into this period of Kittie's career a little more. It's with great
great excitement that I welcome Morgan Lander to the Life Is Peachy Podcast.
Thank you. So happy that you asked me to do this.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to join me today and look back on 20 years of Oracle.
I know, it's so wild.
Yeah, it must be right. Spit and Oracle have a special place in my heart, and looking back 2 decades ago, it makes sense because Kittie are a band that teleport me to a time in life that just clicked. When music helped make sense of the mess and gave clarity and confidence to me on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, here I am talking about the impact your music had on me during those days, but of course, I imagine music was no different for you growing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we were to look back before Kittie was to even take shape, what were your early memories or impactful moments associated with music?
The music that we were sort of listening to and inspired by, like while we were writing Spit, was, you know, the new metal and like mid-90s kind of stuff that you probably also would agree are like albums that when you listen to takes you back to a different place. Definitely the first Deftones album, for sure. The first Korn album as well. A band called Nothing Face, their first full release, Pacifier, is one that transports me to a different time as well. We kind of latched onto them early on. That was really cool. The first Marilyn Manson album, Portrait of an American Family, was like a big one. And whenever I listen to that, it sort of transports me back to a time when I was trying to figure out who I was, as we all were when we were teenagers, especially young teenagers. And also, as far as the band is concerned, you know, like who we wanted to be and the music that we wanted to make.
And when did you discover you could have this potential outlet of expression through the use of your voice and performing vocals?
That whole story is kind of funny because when we were forming the band, we were super into the idea of forming a band, but nobody wanted to sing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were all very apprehensive about it. And I can remember the person that I was back then, and I remember being a very angry and just very like sort of conflicted inside myself about growing up in general and a lot of stuff. Not that I was a troubled younger person, but there's oftentimes a battle going on inside of you when you're sort of coming of age. When it was kind of like, well, I don't want to sing. Well, I don't want to sing. I volunteered because it wasn't that I thought I could sing or that I thought I had a talent, but it was more that I believed that I had the anger and the emotion and the passion behind it. I thought I was pissed off enough that I could do it.
Amazing.
That first Kittie demo, Sex is Hell, my voice it's not great and it's not well rehearsed. It doesn't sound vicious. I think one of my friends back in the day said that I sounded like a dying raccoon. I'm angry enough that I could do it. And so that was basically how I became the front person of Kittie. Nobody else really wanted to take on that responsibility. And it just sort of took off from there. But it wasn't an easy process, I don't think. I didn't think that I had inherent singing talent starting out. And it's quite obvious, like, you know, the early demos, early shows, my vocal abilities have changed and evolved over many, many years. But it was more about the emotion for me rather than, you know, my raw talent or whatever.
Unless somebody has got a better idea.
Yeah, I definitely think and feel it's that raw emotion of Spit that really resonated with the audience and connected with the teenage fans at the time. I know I was a huge fan of that anyway. So there's this video I love to watch regularly on YouTube. If you search Kittie, Spit, Ozfest, it will pop up.
Oh yeah.
This is something that really inspires me, and also it just gets me so excited and pumped, full of energy. It's a natural pick-me-up. It's an amazing moment captured in time, but beyond that, it's also something that puts things into perspective. The age you all were, touring full-time on the back of your debut, all the while you haven't even finished school yet, and here you are, in Kittie, having to grow up in front of the world, audiences, and your peers.
Yeah.
Finding your voice creatively and personally at a point in time in life when that's a struggle for any teenager at the best of times in the conventional setting of a high school.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What was it like then, essentially growing up, discovering yourself as an artist and a person in front of crowds around the world? How did that impact you, and what did you learn the most about yourself during that touring cycle for Spit?
It was fucking weird, let me tell you.
Oh, boom.
I feel like back then, like I did all my growing up in public, and it was really strange to look at myself then, and I can see maybe where I was having a rough time at that moment in my life, or always changing my hairstyles. I can always tell what month it was by just looking at pictures because of the hairstyle. Like when I cut my hair all off for the Charlotte video.
Raiden? It's a new look.
It was a really, really strange time, but it was still the dawn of the internet in a weird way. And so we didn't necessarily come up against some of the scrutiny if we came out today we would have, because a lot of people live their lives more online now than ever before. And so in a way, we were sort of shielded from some of that super freaky, weird, intense scrutiny that happens. But that's not to say that that didn't happen, because it absolutely did. It was just more like the era of like message boards and things like that, right? So you could always read the comments, and people had a lot of really mean things to say as well. And especially coming out as young as we were and being women.
Why would you write lyrics like, I look in the mirror and the horror's all I see?
That's not about perception. Yeah, it's basically, I think a lot of people would tend to look at us, and I think this goes for a lot of some bands. People have a preconceived idea of what, a certain, like a band should be about, the way they dress, their gender, their age, and they have a preconceived idea, and, they tend to, think something before they actually delve into it and, do the research and whatever. And that's basically the idea behind that song. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Such a huge focus on that in the media. It felt like people were overlooking and not really taking seriously like the talent aspect of it. And it's really sad that there were a lot of people that even didn't believe that young girls were capable of what we were capable of, like writing Spit and performing that stuff live. And so there was a lot of weird judgment. You're young, coming into your own, in your own mental capacity, your own physical capacity as well, and people are scrutinizing your body or like choosing who's the hottest one in the band or that type of thing. Like it definitely does and did number on your head. And that was a big challenge, and it was really tough to sort of read. I've realized that reading that stuff is really super detrimental to my mental health. And so I try not to like read comments and stuff like that. Here's a secret that I've never told anybody.
Cool, yeah, go for it.
Between tours, when I'd be home, I used to like get on the internet and get on message boards and find people that hated Kittie and just talk to them and not let them know who I was, right? And just like try to like find out why and sort of like discuss with them from like an angle that maybe they didn't consider. And like a lot of times there are people that like I kind of changed their mind a little bit as well. And it was kind of like this like neat little secret that I had where I would just go online and find haters and then make them not hate Kittie.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I really felt for Kittie in some ways back then, under the microscope and a lot of the focus being taken away from the music itself.
Let me see your fucking ass! You see, kick some ass. What walking shit now the time for you? You ask why you lived it. Was the answer for Are you crazy motherfuckers doing it? That negativity, a lot of times people are projecting. All people are like this, you know? You hate the things outwardly that maybe you actually might be kind of insecure about yourself. So stuff about self-confidence and maybe jealousy. We had other people in bands, you know, say really horrible and detrimental things in public because it was maybe stemming from a place of jealousy or insecurity. That's it's a really hard thing to sort of combat. But I understand that hurt people. And, you know, we all have our own struggles. And I just have kind of maybe come to realize that it wasn't just because, you know, people didn't like the music or whatever. Maybe it was just that they had their own issues to sort of deal with. And I forgive them.
Yeah, that seems like the best possible place you could be with something like this. Otherwise, yeah, it's a lot of baggage and self-deprecation to take with you over the years, especially from a young age.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that self-reflection and sort of coming to terms with a lot, because, you know, our story is not like the happy ending that a lot of people would hope that it would be and whatnot. So there's been a lot of reflection. And yeah, I think the best thing to do is just let go and forgive and not dwell over the things that you can't change.
Once Kittie was signed and a full-time touring act, how did the business side of things impact you as a creative? Did anything change for you, positive or negative, from starting the band in high school with friends to Kittie essentially becoming a professional business?
Yeah, and that was a hard transition as well. A bunch of kids having fun, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is a business. So that obviously created its own set of challenges. I think our age sort of did help to kind of shield us in a way, but because my dad took on the role of manager for the band after things started to get kind of crazy, I feel like I probably heard more than I should have about the business or whatever. But yeah, there was a lot of pressure. And like, I can remember coming home from Ozfest, and that was literally like 6-7 months after the album was released, and being expected to start the next album like then. And we were like, wow, the pressure is super on. It felt wrong. And I know that they always say like, hey, you've got your entire life to write your first album, but then as a signed act, it's sort of like, well, you're expected to follow up with something even better, quicker. And at that point, we're still super young. I was 18 and I was the oldest one. And then we were expected to dive right in and like top spit right after like a 2-month tour. We were fucking tired. We were exhausted. That was a huge pressure that I don't think we were really expecting at that time as well. So, you know, of course there's going to be like feelings about that. And it was tough. We did a few more tours after Ozfest that year, then took a decent amount of time in between in 2001 to write and release Oracle at the end of the year of 2001 there.
You know, to tell the truth, I thought you were gonna fold.
Well, I'm dead either way. So do it yourself, asshole.
Did have some ideas and whatnot. Like there's some clips that you might be able to find like from Ozfest where the riff from Pain, we put it at the end of maybe Brackish. We had a lot of these riffs and ideas already kind of brewing, but that was really probably the extent of it. The expectation to be like, all right, time to write your follow-up. And you kind of didn't even feel like you'd finished the cycle for the first album.
Yeah, I mean, you barely had a chance to come down from it, right?
Absolutely. It was like to get your bearings and to figure out what you want to do next. And it was a lot of pressure. And I don't think that we were like sort of mentally prepared for that at that point.
I wish the rain would stop just once.
can't rain all the time.
Touring Spit sounds like it taught you a thing or two and was a massive learning experience. How
Absolutely.
did all of that go into what would eventually become Kittie's sophomore album? And what did you hope to achieve, or what statement did you want to make with Oracle?
I can only obviously speak for myself.
Yeah, of course.
I did quite a large bulk of the writing, but for me, I feel like my experiences, having lived them all sort of through this weird, distorted online and reported lens where the main focus was always that we're young girls and our looks, that I started to sort of try to re-engineer things to where it was like, well, you know what? If they care so much about how we look, well, maybe I'm just gonna not be so pretty. And then maybe we're gonna make an album that's even more heavy and more quote unquote metal. So for me, I was trying to do the opposite of maybe what a lot of people perhaps would expect the band to do.
Make somebody a fine wife someday.
You should see me go to camp.
The opening track comes out swinging. Straight off the bat, Oracle reminds me of Sepultura, against-ish type of attitude. This is who we are and this is what we're doing. No compromise. A sense of domination and survival. And in 2 minutes and 3 seconds, I don't think they could have done a better job. Everything has stepped up a notch. The songwriting, the execution, the production, the vocals. Oracle would go on to debut at 57 on the Billboard Top 200, and by the end of 2002 it had sold 250,000 units in the US alone.
From the label, there was pressure. They were like, oh, maybe we can get you some songwriters. They wanted hits, hits, hits. And we shunned all of that. And we were like, fuck you, no way, that's stupid. And decided to just make a heavier and darker album. And it was all just because I was just fed up with the scrutiny of being a woman and all my merits being judged on my looks and our looks in general. It was, a group effort, obviously. Everybody was being judged on how they looked and that they were young women. And so it was sort of a protest in a way to go the direction sort of that we did.
Not in my movie.
I don't regret it, of course, because I think Oracle is a great album. And I know that a lot of people really, really, latched onto that album. There's a lot more anger and there's a lot more metal. And maybe people just weren't expecting that, but that's where we felt it was important to go.
The music video for lead single, What I Always Wanted, received heavy airplay on MTV2, and it was a great introduction into the new album and evolved sound. One that definitely leaned more towards the general metalcore atmosphere, but still with the lingering remains of their nu metal roots to give everything a nice, well-rounded groove element and tone. voice between the 2 studio albums, that vocal evolution coming into Oracle?
It's been an evolution of quote unquote finding my voice. And that just came with the time and the experience of being on tour as much as we were. I didn't purposefully try to change the way that I sounded. As I used my voice more and we toured relentlessly, I found a way to sustain that vocal harshness without injuring myself. Since Oracle, that technique is what I have used for the rest of my career. I was just in the studio for a week and I did 6 straight hours of just relentless metal vocals. And afterwards I did some harmonies, you know what I mean? I've managed to sort of figure this thing out, but it took time. It took that entire duration of that year in the Spit cycle to sort of come to a place where I found a voice that was brutal, but also super sustainable. With Spit, you know, we did play shows and we did go on a small tour prior to the release of Spit, like it was like 2 weeks or whatever, but I'd never played 30 shows in a row or done 2 months of touring. Brackish, I had to come back into the studio 2 weeks later after my voice had healed to actually sing the song. At the time that we were recording Spit, I pooched my voice. It was like totally done. I could not sing, I could not scream anymore. And we were debating leaving Brackish as a song with no vocals.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole other story. We couldn't finish the track. I came back in on the spot, kind of rewrote a bunch of stuff and was able to perform those vocals. But with the practice and sort of discovering a proper technique, it became easier to sound like that. And that was a natural evolution of my voice through that whole year of touring. I guess it's protective and it still sounds brutal. I'm grateful for that because it could have gone the other way and really hurt my voice, and that could have been the end of it, you know?
What?
In past episodes, I've been lucky enough to have ex-Head Planet Earth original guitarist Wes Gear and Chad Benakos on the podcast to talk over both Blackout and, of course, 2001's Sophomore Broke, a massive fan favourite album that, of course, features yours truly on quite a unique song. I'd love to hear about what you remember from your feel-good experience working with Head Planet Earth and providing guest vocals on a track which also featured none other than Serge from System of a Down.
Yeah, honestly, I remember that we recorded in New York City, and it was just like we were there doing some like press and show stuff, I think. Back then we didn't have Instagram or Facebook or anything, so they like, I guess, reached out to the label and said that they were interested in having me do a track, and I was like, this is cool. So yeah, I went to a studio in New York City and met a couple of the guys. I definitely remember that the singer was there. He's quite an imposing man. So it was kind of weird because some of them were there, but it wasn't like me and Serge were in the same room together. I believe that he recorded his bit on that song separately, but I knew that he was going to be on the track as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, like we just went there and hung out, met the guys, you know, had a good time, did some vocals, and like that was that really. I know they actually recently celebrated a 20th anniversary of
Broke.
Yeah, and I saw like a few people tag me in some stuff when that happened. Such an honor to be a part of it. Grateful that they asked me. Looking back at that time, you know, you'd think that more people would be brave enough to ask little old Morgan from Kittie to do guest vocals and whatnot. And they were the first, really. And to me, I think that takes courage. I was honored to be on the song. It's a super fun song still to this day, and I am stoked that people are loving it. It's like a different vibe. Some of the like hip hop elements and the rock elements together, but it works, and that album as a whole is great. So.
And what I find interesting about this particular guest spot is that it's the only actual documented recording of your voice in that interesting transitional period between Spit and Oracle.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting that you mentioned that too, because like in listening back to the song itself, my voice sounds like that bridge between the two. I can still hear that voice that was on Spit, but the amount of touring that we'd done at the time, which was probably just like a few months, it was like enough to have started that change. And it's like this weird interim period of both voices together. And it's probably the only recording that you can hear that, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've always wondered why there was a little something extra that stood out for me with regards to that particular guest appearance, and it's cool to have now discovered why.
Yeah, it's like got a little bit of the highs and a little bit of the lows. It captures a really special time.
They knew exactly what they wanted. They were very smart. They knew going into it. So we actually had a little bit more time, but we also didn't have to work as hard. And things were done like a lot easier, and we had a lot more fun.
Both Spit and Oracle were produced by the renowned Garth Richardson at Emax Studios in London, Ontario, and I've always been fascinated how someone who produced Rage Against the Machine's multi-platinum self-titled debut ended up at the helm of Spit and thrust into the world of nu metal releases.
You trust me?
Of course I trust you.
Upon working with Kittie, Garth had a line of really impressive credentials in his back pocket from various genres with the likes of Melvins, L7, Testament, Ugly Kid Joe, The Jesus Lizard, Skunk Anansi, Sick of It All, and even New Zealand's She Had, but was by no means on the radar as an in-demand nu metal messiah. So now I can finally ask... How did Kittie end up with Garth Richardson, and what was the experience like teaming up with him once again for Oracle in comparison to the debut album?
I'm really grateful for Garth being as open-minded as he was with wanting to work with us back then. Started with being courted by NG Records, which was our very first record label, Canadian Music Week in 1999, which is sort of like a Toronto-wide music festival where at the time a lot of labels would come out and there'd be showcases and you could maybe discover new talent or discover new bands, that type of thing. And so we ended up speaking with Jason Weiner, who was one of the head guys at NG Records, and they were just sort of like a small New York City punk label. We were quite the obnoxious kids, and we just like, went and talked to people, and I guess we ended up talking to him because he had this like Jamiroquai hat. It was like really big and fuzzy, and we just went up to him and started making fun of him. And that's how that happened. After we had discussed the potential of like signing and whatnot, then it was sort of like, okay, well, we need to get into the studio and do some album stuff. And Garth Richardson and his father, Jack Richardson, are from London. And so the owner of the studio we recorded, Spit and Oracle, his name is Rob Nation, and his studio is Emax Studios. And he knew Garth because, you know, they're around the same age, very involved in the industry and whatnot. And so he was like, well, I'll talk to Garth and see if he'd be interested in doing it. And, you know, we didn't have like money or anything. So he agreed and he ended up doing the album just for points, just like a percentage of the sales or whatever from the album, because we didn't have money to pay him right off the bat or whatever. Like I said, I'm really grateful for his open-mindedness to want to do a project like that.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it worked out in a great way.
I find it interesting as well that he had done a lot of stuff prior to that, but I feel like after he did Spit and then its success, he actually ended up doing like a few nu metal bands. Mm-hmm. Like he became in demand for that genre more than like some of the other genres that he may have been associated with in the past. Did he do a Spineshank album?
Yes, he produced 2 epic Spineshank albums, The Height of Callousness and Self-Destructive Pattern.
Yeah.
Along with Mudvayne's debut, LD50, stuff with Project 86, and one of the best nu metal releases of all time, 40 Below Summer's insane major label debut, Invitation to the Dance.
He obviously was already a well-established name, but it sort of like shifted the focus of some of those albums afterwards because it did so well. And afterwards, bands in our genre were kind of like, oh, well, you know, he did a great job on this album. Maybe we should also work with him. And I thought that that was kind of a neat little thing going on. So just kind of like right place, right time. We knew somebody that knew him and he was super open-minded about making the album. And we recorded over 9 days, like after school type thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, some of that footage is there in the documentary Origins Evolutions, but it was like our very first like real studio experience. We were very naive. We didn't really know how it all worked, and that was our first big experience. So then obviously we tour for like an entire year and a bit, and it's time to do Oracle. And of course we wanted to work with Garth again, but all of that experience with playing every night, it improved our playing abilities as well. We all became better musicians because of that. And so going back into the studio, we were a little older, a lot more experienced and focused about what we might want from an album.
What comes to mind when you think of a song like Safe? And does that song stand out as a highlight for you and the writing, recording experience of Oracle? And if not, are there any particular songs from that album that have stayed with you or still really resonate?
You know what? Safe is such a weird song. It just seems kind of like this album as a whole is so heavy. It's got like a totally different vibe, but I would say that it's definitely a high point in some of the writing and the ideas because we were trying new things on an album where we were like, we want to be heavier. We want to prove everybody wrong. We kind of just like did this weird move with like some piano and it's kind of mellow sort of until the end. That song would be one of my more proud achievements, I think. mean, all of the songs stand out. I think Pain for me is like a big one.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about like the tone of the guitar when that first.
Yeah.
It's just like, ooh, it hits you. And then that cymbal hit, that hi-hat hit, and then it just comes in. Oh, it's so like slow and mean. It's very visceral. When I hear it now, 20 years later, I'm still like, damn, that is a riff.
Yeah. One of the things I really love about this album is its overall sound. I know many people, many publications have talked about the sound of Spit, but I think more conversation needs to be had about the unique vibe and atmosphere of Oracle. In retrospect, it's obvious that this album indeed paved the way towards the Kittie sound, which you as a band are definitely now known for. But having said that, no other Kittie album really sounds like this one. For me, it's a perfect sweet spot, blending a really produced but grimy tone with a great mixture of heavy genres and elements. And while progressing pretty much towards a completely different genre, it still also feels like this is the last Kittie album to carry with it somewhat of a Spit undertow. Is there a way you can put what I'm trying to explain into words?
Yeah, absolutely. Sonically, obviously, I think it would have something to do with using maybe, some better gear, having a better grasp on our instruments in general. We definitely upgraded our instruments as well in between the first album and the second one. Like the first album we recorded with like Fender Squiers, you know what I mean? Those are like, you save up all your allowance money guitars. Whereas we started to be able to like afford better equipment. We were using like Mesa Boogie. And for the recording, I actually had a friend here in London. His name is Reiner, and he has a little guitar shop that he makes guitars, Guitar Works. And he made me a guitar, and I was like, I want this thing to just be evil. I'm pretty sure the video that you had mentioned, Spit at Ozfest, I'm pretty sure I'm playing that guitar.
Ah, cool. Wow, yeah, that guitar is iconic. I remember seeing you with it in so many magazine pictures back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, it was something that sort of came about midway through the touring cycle, so I actually got to use it on that album, and it was super heavy. And I also think that it did have a lot to do with the mix and master, and Randy Staub, who did all Metallica's Black Album and shit, he mixed and mastered that. We went to Vancouver and we did that at Bryan Adams' studio there and stuff. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. You know, he's a big name, and he also was known for big albums. The perfect storm of so many elements. As musicians, we upgraded our instruments. That's always a plus. But, we also upgraded our abilities and became like a super, super tight band. And then it just helped having the right sonic elements to tweak things in a way that just gives it its own life. When you got a great track record, people like Garth and Randy Staub, it's just like, let them do what they do best, which is make killer albums.
What is your proudest memory or moment from Oracle, and where does it stack up, or what does it represent for you in the history of the band?
I feel like it represents a turning point for sure. It's hard to believe the second album, it represents a turning point. It seems kind of weird, but I feel like we've had in our career a couple of rebirths. For me, are poignant moments in time where things were sort of born anew, like the phoenix rising from the ashes and becoming something different. And for me, another album would be In the Black, an album where I felt like we were born a new beast. But for me, Oracle, it definitely stacks up for me as one of my favorites, sonically and writing-wise, and just as a whole, the entire album, it just sits as one piece to me. For me, I don't know, Spit, it's hard to listen to, I feel. And not that I don't appreciate and love, it is our most successful album. People love it, but it reminds me of a time that I have a hard time, relating to almost. Do you know what I mean? It was we were so young and so innocent, and you can hear so much of that. To me, Oracle is we came out of the gate swinging, and it represents to me us really reclaiming our power. All that crazy stuff that we went through with that first album cycle, Oracle, it's like a statement. We are here and we are fucking pissed.
Hell yes. Well, it's so great to hear you talk so highly about Oracle. Even as a fan, yeah, it sounded and felt like a turning point.
I'm glad that it does hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts. I feel like the people that really love that album are very passionate about it. I have friends who weren't into the first album and love Oracle because it feels different. It feels like a different vibe, a different band. And a lot of these people that say these things are really well-rounded and incredible musicians, classically trained people. But this is the album that they gravitate towards more than the first album. And I feel like that it might say something about the leaps and bounds that we've made between those albums and the creativity and the accomplishment that we were able to sort of get to. It really makes me happy. I love that people still love this music. It's astonishing to me that 20 years later, people are still talking about Oracle, are still loving it, are still challenged by it, are still appreciative and still able to take things that they need for their life away from it. It's completely astonishing to me. So it's really, really an honor to be chatting about it today with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, obviously really, really nice to hear. And I know the fans would really feel great to be here with you too, celebrating 20 years of Oracle. When it comes to fronting a band that is obviously no stranger to lineup changes, how was it to maintain the dynamics within Kittie? Or yeah, an example, was there a bond with your sister Mercedes and somewhat of a holding the fort together ethos, or did you have to become independent and lead the charge, take the reins type of thing?
I actually have done a little bit of thinking about this. I definitely don't think that we would have made it and been a band for as long as we have been if Mercedes and I weren't sisters. Obviously, with siblings, there's an unbreakable bond that you have. And whether things were really good growing up or not, we always were like a team. I will be the first to admit, Mercedes and I did not always get along. We had a lot of troubles during the band, just like getting along and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just think that as we've grown up, we've learned to sort of appreciate the fact that we have each other, and that will never, ever change. When you're growing up and you're under a lot of pressure and scrutiny, it can definitely take a toll on any relationship. And family businesses are definitely not excluded from that at all. And in a weird way, that kind of makes Kittie a family business, right? There were times when we had no one and it was just us. And we were like, well, what the fuck do we do? Do we start a new band? Do we end Kittie? Do we go on with our lives and sort of put that in the past? There was a lot of hard times together. Those first couple albums, we definitely were not in a great way with our relationship. But again, being siblings, it's like you overcome. And I'm really super grateful that Mercedes and I have a great relationship. But, with Oracle and the lineup changes, that was hard. That was really hard because to me, I remember feeling when Fallon left that it was like, I'm losing my friend, and it was really sad. It just really sucks because business things take over and so much pressure. There was a lot of pressure on all of us, and we all sort of, react in different ways. I look back at that time, I remember being really, really upset about it and really sad because it was like, well, you're my friend. It strips away all the innocence of the things that were when we started the band. Things become serious and business decisions have to be made. The label expects this and there's money on the line and blah, blah, blah. And it really just kind of sucks the joy out of just being friends and having a great time doing this together. It took a toll on all of us.
When you look back to that period of your life, say 99 to 2002, what would you say is the most valuable thing you've carried through with yourself from back then and remains of value and positivity with you today?
Oh, shit. Wow. Well, I don't know. When I look back at that time, I feel like I was a different person, and maybe I wasn't the nicest person as well. Sometimes I reflect on that and I think, maybe I could have done this different or I could have acted differently. But I think in retrospect, I have to be soft with myself because a lot of people forget that we were just kids.
Yeah.
And we went through all of this and we were super young, right? So I think maybe the valuable lesson that I've learned in being who I am now, but looking back then, maybe I didn't learn it then, because back then I would have been like, trust no one. Which kind of still stands in a way because going through all the industry stuff, but I feel like being true to yourself and not ever straying from the path that you feel is right for you, that would be something that I think I've taken away from that. And I can think of times from those periods, 99 to 2002, especially earlier on, where people would say, well, girls can't do that, or you shouldn't be screaming, or I don't believe that you wrote that, or I don't believe that you played that. And these were things that I think helped to form the person that I am. And I feel like you can and you should always, if it's right for you, if you feel passionate about it, then you can and you should. Those are some of the questions that come up with young women in bands, especially back then. Should they be doing it? Why do you let your kids do that? These are all things that people have asked and said, and it's wild to me, but I think that it's important to just do what feels right for you and go out there and kick ass, If it makes people uncomfortable, I think that you're doing something right. If it raises questions or it makes you feel a certain way, it's like sometimes you got to think about why. Back then, what we did, things that we said and the music that we made, I think without really doing it purposefully, it came with a lot of questions for a lot of people and challenged a lot of ideas.
Nicely put. And even though you mentioned without it being the intention of Kittie, you really did play a big part in providing that headspace, that belief and confidence for many to think they could do it too, chase their dreams. It really opened the door for inspiration to think, yeah, I can do that, it's possible. And that was a really exciting time. And though Kittie had to kind of be dragged through the dirt, you really helped a lot of people during what's often quite a challenging period in life, teenagehood. And that's really something that's proved to be timeless and I think made a difference.
And you know what? I gladly would go through the crap and would do it again if it meant that there are people that are inspired in their life in a way that would give them the courage and the confidence to do what it is they feel is right. If somebody has gotten that out of our music, then my work is done. A really great feeling.
Amazing. Yeah, that's obviously a big part of why so many of these albums stand the test of time and mean so much to so many 20 years later. The music speaks for itself, but the stories behind the albums really adds much more depth and context to not only the story of the music, but also the person delivering it. And at the end of the day, you're a human being like any of us, and I think that's something really important to remember.
Thank you.
And on that note, Morgan, thank you so much for your time and energy in joining the Life Is Peachy podcast to look back on and celebrate your album, Kittie's Oracle. Another 20th anniversary is a massive milestone for you and the band, so congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate it. This was really great, and sometimes it's really nice to reflect on these things, and it's hard to believe that 20 years on, people are still loving and cherishing Oracle. I'm so happy that you asked me to do this. I'm sure we'll do it again sometime.
I love this job.
Thank you so much for your time and energy and hanging out with myself, Fallon and Morgan today on the Life Is Peachy podcast. And right now over at the Lip YouTube, there is not one, but 2 Kittie reaction videos waiting for you with Chris, my wonderful partner in crime. Wow. Head over and see what she thinks of Kittie's music video Charlotte and their iconic performance of Spit at 1999's Ozfest. New podcast episodes are on the horizon, and you can head over to instagram.com/Life Is Peachy podcast to stay up to date with what's coming up. But if you want to find out all the juicy secrets early and have access to exclusive Life Is Peachy content, you can make this a reality by simply opening up a new tab on the electronic device you're currently on and typing
patreon.com/Life Is Peachy podcast
to choose your tier of choice. It really goes a long way and makes a huge difference. I'd love to say thank you to all my virtual tip jar supporters, and a big shout out to Michael, Majika, Shane and Vaginator for spinning that CD Discman tier and helping Life Is Peachy over at Patreon. And I've officially launched another platform, the Life Is Peachy mixtape session. Do you want to feature on an episode? Do you have something creative you want to share with the world, discuss, and promote? Well, send an email over to lifeispeachypodcast@hotmail.com and let's give you the mic. If you'd like to see this grow in 2022 and for the episodes to continue on, then please do whatever you can. I have the year mapped out with the guests, albums, and celebrations, but to actually keep this growing, I need your help. In a time inundated with so many amazing podcasts, content, and hosts, it's pretty hard to start a new one in the midst of it all and keep it moving forward. Rate, review, tell a friend, tag away, join the Patreon community, whatever it may be. You're a legend for it. This is non-profit, so whatever it is, thank you, seriously. I so appreciate you. You have no idea how much it helps.
Get on with the ceremony.
I wanted to take a moment to send love around the world. Let's remember to be there for each other and do the best we can for the planet we live on. See you all soon, and until then...
See you at the party, Richter!
Bye-bye!
You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
This episode was written, edited, and produced by myself, recorded from the comfort of my own home.
DIY style.
With each guest calling in from wherever they happen to be around the world at that particular time. The Life Is Peachy theme song is an original tune for this podcast, written by Tim Richardson. All music by the artist featured in this episode is used with permission. Further details can be found in the description of the specific episode. All artwork is original and illustrated for the Life Is Peachy podcast by Chris Lisa Leifting.